where sunlight hesitates. People say the caves up there have no bottom. They say the rock opens into throats that swallow sound and breath, and that some men who went in never came back. The old ones sit on plastic chairs by the shops and tell you not to linger, not to listen. If you stand too close, they say, the hill learns your name. I used to roll my eyes at that. Wind does strange things in rock. Echoes repeat until they sound like words. You tell yourself that because you have to. If you live here, you learn how to explain the unexplainable so you can sleep. The afternoon my mother went to the market. I was watching a pot on the stove. The broth rose and frothed, foam slipping over the rim to hiss on the burner. I turned the flame down and wiped the spill, thinking she'd be back any minute. She had asked me to wait. She always did. Elena was precise like that. Lists in her head, errands done in order. A woman who hated loose ends. Minutes stretched. Then an hour. I walked to the market, weaving between stalls, asking faces I recognized if they'd seen her. Someone said she had left a while ago. Someone else shrugged. 40 minutes ago. Maybe. That kind of answer sits wrong in your stomach. I went home with a quiet worry, dialed my Aunt Rosa's number, and heard it ring. The door exploded open before Rosa could answer. My mother stood in the frame, her back pressed hard against the wood as if she had slammed it shut to keep something out. Her skin looked dusted with chalk. Her breath came in short pulls. Her eyes were wide and unfocused, fixed on a point behind me like the world had rearranged itself while she was gone. I asked her what was wrong. She didn't answer. Her hands shook, then lifted toward her mouth, fingers touching her lips as if she were holding a scream in place. The silence was loud enough to make my ears ring. Finally, her voice fell out of her like a dropped plate. Lorena has something inside her. The name landed heavy. Lorena lived 2 houses down. A woman who kept to herself, who watched the street through her window. I had noticed she hadn't been around lately, but people disappear here all the time for reasons that don't belong to you. Work, family, no one asks. My mother screamed then, a dry, tearing sound that scraped the walls, and moved past me into the kitchen as if the light could anchor her. I followed, my heart hammering. She repeated the sentence, the same words, like they were the only ones left to her. When she finally steadied enough to speak, she told me what she had seen. She had been walking back from the market with a tomato in one hand and a bag of spices in the other when she saw Lorena in the window. Nothing strange at first. Just a face, framed by glass. Then Lorena raised her hand and beckoned, slow and deliberate, the motion so steady it felt practiced. My mother stepped closer, confused, and in that instant, Lorena vanished from the frame. The door opened almost immediately. Inside, Lorena stood in the center of the room, rigid, her posture locked as if she had been set there. Her eyes didn't move. When she stepped back, her knees folded at an angle. My mother's mind refused to accept, joints bending as if they had forgotten their purpose. Lorena didn't speak. She chewed. The sound was sharp and brittle, like thin glass cracking, like eggshells crushed between teeth. It repeated in the dim room, a rhythm that set my mother's nerves on edge. She backed away. She looked up and saw that every bulb in the ceiling had burst. Shards of glass hung down, catching the gray light from the open door. She thought of asking what Lorena wanted, of saying anything at all, but then Lorena spoke. I was in the cave, she said, her tone uneven, as if another mouth were shaping the words. On the hill. She paused to chew again. No one knew. No one noticed I was gone for 3 weeks. No one missed me. That was when my mother noticed the delay. Lorena's mouth moved a fraction of a second after the sound, like bad dubbing. It was subtle enough to slip past you if you didn't know to look, and horrifying once you did. Lorena went on, explaining how she had woken one night half asleep, half not, and walked out into the cold without a coat, her feet carrying her uphill until the iron bars loomed. She pressed herself against them, skin stretching, pulling, as if her body wanted to fit through the gaps. An old woman appeared behind her, smelling of ash and sulfur, carrying a baby. It wasn't the woman who spoke. It was the child. Clear, confident. It told Lorena to knock 3 times on the bars. They vanished, leaving a coin that bounced on damp stone. Lorena tried to smile at my mother, but the expression stuttered and repeated, a mechanical twitch. She opened and closed her mouth with the same shape again and again, then used her hands to pull at her face, forcing her muscles into something else that wouldn't hold. She pressed the coin into my mother's palm. The pain was instant and unbearable. Elena dropped it with a cry. The metal glowed red. When she showed me her hand later, a perfect circle was burned into her skin, a warped symbol scorched at its center. With that coin, Lorena said. She struck the iron. The sound fell away, echoing down into a throat without end. After a silence thick enough to press against her ears, the gate opened by itself. She descended. Lorena described a place that was cold and hot at the same time, wind like ice on the lungs, while the body sweated as if with fever. Each breath hurt. She walked stairs that never seemed to finish, sometimes straight, sometimes spiraling, the steps ticking beneath her like a giant clock, marking nothing. At intervals she saw things that hurt to remember, reminders of human pain set like markers along the way. She wondered if she would ever reach the bottom, if anyone would notice she was gone. As my mother repeated the words, her voice split for a moment, two tones overlapping. She said. Lorena heard murmurs everywhere, prayers spoken backward without clear words. Then eyes opened in the darkness below, hundreds of them, fixed on her. Waiting animals sat like people, dogs and cats lined up, skin hanging in strips, flesh rotted, still as statues. Bodies lay on the steps, breathing slowly, sleepers who could not wake. The stone turned to bone, crunching underfoot as if still alive. Lorena lifted her dress to show her feet, skin torn, blood fresh, bones splintering through. At the end of the stairs stood a man in a black habit. He never spoke, but his thoughts slid into her skull and arranged themselves as truth. My mother tried to believe it was madness. She needed to. But the mouth moving out of time, the coin, the burn, these were not tricks of the mind. When a dry crack sounded from the kitchen, she turned and saw the figure Lorena had described. The habit brushed the floor. His feet did not touch it. He hovered, head bowed, as if he had been there all along. The air thickened. Silence pressed in, broken only by my mother's breath. Lorena smiled again, the same looped gesture, and the figure lifted his head. The hood revealed only shadow, features dissolving like smoke. He did not open his mouth. A low murmur filled the room, vibrating the walls. Lorena spoke. Two voices matched each other, word for word, rhythm for rhythm. No one missed me. No one looked. In that moment, my mother understood that Lorena was only lending her body. The thing inside used her tongue and throat and lips to make sound. Terror hit like a wave. Elena ran without looking back, convinced that if she stayed 1 second longer she would be taken too. She burst into our house shaking, told me everything with hands that would not stop moving. Before she finished, screams rose from the street long, distorted, layered voices. We opened the door. The avenue lay empty, washed in dull light. I begged her to stay in. She didn't listen. She went upstairs, returned with a rosary, and wrapped it around her fingers like a weapon. She stepped into the dark with her eyes fixed ahead. She came back at 11. I spent the evening with my stomach in knots, my heart racing at every sound. We weren't alone in our worry. Neighbors stood outside, whispering. My mother hadn't been the only one to go looking for Lorena. They brought her back bound and gagged, struggling with a strength that wasn't hers, hair wild, eyes rolled white, sounds tearing from her throat that belonged to no language. They took her to the nearest church because they had run out of ideas. The doors didn't open at first. Who would let in a woman roaring like the earth? When they did, everyone froze. The nave was bare, no saints, no crucifix. Either they had been removed, or they had fled. In a moment of chaos, Lorena broke free and ran up the bell tower. She didn't hesitate. She threw herself out. She hit headfirst, the crack of bone loud and final. People thought it was over. That night, those who stayed to prepare the wake said her body spasmed. Hands twitched, legs shook. Her head hung at a wrong angle, split open, hair hiding half her face. She stood and walked, each bone seeming loose, moving with impossible force. Her eyes opened empty, and she went out into the street and vanished, leaving a dark trail on the pavement. No one ever saw her again. Years passed. Lorena's house still stands. No one enters. The door is sealed with a coin driven into the wood like a lock from below 12 years, and no one has dared touch it. I wish I could tell you where this happened. I can't. My grandmother listens too. She asked me to repeat it word for word, but not to name the city or the church. Somewhere in Mexico there is a church that looks like nothing you expect, built from a community hall with sheet metal roofing and a polished cement floor. It has no permanent priest. People take turns caring for it because they built it with their own hands. There was a statue there once. The Good Shepherd. No one remembers who brought it. It appeared one day on the altar, detailed beyond what a local craftsman could manage, eyes lowered as if watching someone fallen. It had no plaque, no mark. It cried blood. Not all the time. Only when someone was about to die. The first time was years ago, a weekday morning. Dosia Ilosa came to sweep, as she always did. She saw red on the statue's face and thought it was a stain. Up close, she saw thick streams of blood running from its eyes, not dripping, suspended. She knelt and prayed. Photos were taken with an old camera. That afternoon, Duayalosa died in her chair, rosary tangled in her fingers, peace on her face. When they returned, the blood was gone. The second time, after catechism, a child screamed and pointed, 5 streams now, perfect, heavy. The statue's calm expression had tightened, eyes fixed on the boy. No one saw blood move, but a drop marked the child's eyelid. That night, sirens. The boy never returned. Years later, with phones and noise and witnesses, the statue wept again. 2 bodies lay outside, seated against the wall as if resting. Inside, the shepherd's face was soaked, the lamb spattered. Photos were taken. A meeting was called. It was decided the statue didn't warn of tragedy, it caused it. They took it down. It weighed too much. When it cracked under a hammer, an enormous black insect burst out, wings translucent, shrieking. Inside was a fibrous nest, a hidden cavity. The thing escaped through the door and was never seen again. The broken pieces are still kept, wrapped in newspaper waiting for an explanation. I walk past Lorena's house sometimes. The hill breathes at night. Wind moves through iron and stone. Last week, I heard my name from behind the sealed door. Then I heard metal strike wood 3 times.